There's a point in building income where the work itself isn't the real weight anymore. It's the watching, the checking, the quiet feeling that if you step back too much, something might slip. You still show up. You still push. You still keep your hands closer to the machine than you originally planned. Not because the business is failing, because you don't fully trust that it will keep working without you. I've been in that exact place. From the outside, the numbers looked fine. Revenue was coming in. Clients were being served. Nothing was obviously broken. But internally, there was still this low-level tension that made it hard to fully let go. Overwork is often a trust problem disguised as a work ethic. It doesn't feel that way in the moment. In the moment, it feels responsible, diligent, disciplined. You tell yourself you're just being thorough, just staying close to the details, just making sure the quality stays high. But if you look carefully, the real driver is usually uncertainty. Uncertainty about whether the system can hold its shape without your constant attention. Uncertainty about whether the income will stay stable if you ease off even slightly. Uncertainty about whether the small cracks you've noticed might widen if you're not watching closely. That uncertainty creates a very specific behavior pattern. You hover. You double-check. You step in faster than necessary. You keep yourself closer to the center of the business than the architecture actually requires. And over time, that proximity becomes expensive, not just in hours and mental load. I remember hitting a stretch where the business was objectively healthier than it had been months earlier, but my calendar didn't reflect that improvement at all. If anything, I was more involved, more watchful, more mentally tethered to the day-to-day movement of the system. That's when the question finally surfaced clearly. Was the workload actually increasing, or was my trust lagging behind the system's maturity? When trust lags behind structure, the operator becomes the bottleneck. That's one of the quieter transitions most builders have to navigate. Early on, your involvement is necessary. The system genuinely does depend heavily on you. Staying close is part of survival. But at some point, the architecture improves. Processes stabilize. Client flow becomes more predictable. Delivery becomes more repeatable. And yet many builders keep operating as if the business is still fragile in the old way. Not because the system can't handle more independence. Because the confidence hasn't caught up yet. There are usually a few signals that this dynamic is happening. You find yourself checking things that rarely break. You step into situations that the team or process could probably handle. You feel slightly uneasy when you're not monitoring the numbers closely. You notice that even during calm periods, your mental load stays elevated. None of these feel dramatic in isolation, but together they create a pattern of unnecessary proximity. And proximity is expensive in systems that are trying to mature. A system you don't trust will quietly pull you back into full-time effort. One of the harder realizations I had to work through was this. Sometimes the system isn't the only thing that needs strengthening. Sometimes the operator needs recalibration too. Because there's a real adjustment period between building the machine and learning to operate at the distance the machine now allows. If you've spent months or years being the safety net for everything, stepping back can feel unnatural at first, even when the data suggests it's safe, even when the processes are cleaner, even when the business is objectively more stable. Your nervous system still remembers the earlier, more fragile phase. So you stay close out of habit, out of caution, out of a desire to avoid unpleasant surprises. And to be clear, sometimes that caution is justified. Not every system is ready for distance. But many builders stay over-involved longer than necessary because they haven't clearly tested where the true stability line now sits. Trust in an income system isn't built by hoping, it's built by controlled distance. That shift matters. Instead of staying permanently embedded in every layer, more experienced operators begin running small trust experiments. Let the process run without intervention and watch what actually happens. Delay stepping in by a few hours and see if the issue resolves cleanly. Review outcomes instead of monitoring every step. Each small test provides data, and over time, the system either proves its reliability or reveals exactly where reinforcement is still needed. Both outcomes are useful. What's expensive is staying fully embedded without ever updating your assumptions. I've seen builders whose systems were already strong enough to give them more space, but they were still operating at early-stage proximity. The result wasn't more stability. It was unnecessary exhaustion. Longer days than the architecture actually required. More mental load than the business structure justified. And slower progress toward true leverage. Because the real goal of building an income system isn't just to increase revenue. It's to reduce how much of your constant attention the machine requires to keep producing. If your income still depends on your constant presence, the system isn't fully trusted yet by you or by the structure itself. That's an important distinction. Sometimes the fix is structural. Sometimes it's psychological. Often it's a combination of both. So if you notice yourself working harder than the numbers seem to require, it may be worth asking a slightly uncomfortable question. Is the system actually fragile? Or have I not fully updated my level of trust yet? Because the path forward looks different depending on the answer. If the structure still has real weak points, then strengthening the architecture is the right move. But if the system is already more stable than your behavior reflects, the next level of growth may come from something less obvious. Letting the machine carry more of its own weight, and learning gradually and intentionally to step back without feeling like everything might slip the moment you do. That's where overwork finally starts to release. Not because you stopped caring, but because the system and your trust in it finally matured together.